Forget everything you thought you knew about the automotive world. The map where Germany, Japan, and Detroit sat at the center no longer exists. For decades, it seemed the hegemony of Toyota, Volkswagen, and General Motors was an unshakable constant. The phrase Chinese car was synonymous with a cheap, unsafe copy that would fall apart in 3 years. But in 2023, a tectonic shift occurred. Officially, according to the cold, hard statistics, China toppled the old kings from their pedestals and became the planet's leading automobile exporter. Just 40 years ago, in the early 80s, any foreigner visiting Beijing or Shanghai saw the same surreal picture: an endless, ringing sea of bicycles. At that time, China was officially called the Kingdom of Bicycles. A personal car was something out of science fiction, accessible only to the highest party nomenclature. The ultimate dream of a common worker wasn't a sports car, but a reliable flying pigeon bicycle, which they saved up for over years. In 1980, the entire country of 1 billion people produced only about 5,000 passenger cars, a laughable figure compared to the millions rolling off assembly lines in Detroit or Tokyo. How did a country that was mass pedaling in blue workers' robes just yesterday manage to flood the world with high-tech electric cars today and make Elon Musk nervous? This isn't an economic miracle. It is the result of one of the most cunning and far-sighted plans in industrial history. It all started with a strategy called Market for Technology. The Chinese government soberly assessed its strengths. They were hopelessly behind in creating internal combustion engines. Chasing the Germans and Japanese, who had been refining their motors for a century, was futile. So China opened its borders to the global auto giants, Volkswagen, GM, Toyota, but with a strict condition. You want to sell cars to the Chinese? Build factories here, but you cannot own them fully. You must create a joint venture with a local company and split everything 50-50. Blinded by the gigantic market, Western conglomerates agreed. They thought they had found a cheap assembly site, but in reality, they trained their future competitors with their own hands. Chinese engineers stood behind the backs of German and Japanese specialists for decades, absorbing quality standards, logistics, and production culture. However, the main secret to success lies not in copying, but in what the Chinese call overtaking on the bend. In the early 2000s, Beijing realized they would never make an engine better than BMW. So they went all in on technologies that seemed laughable and unpromising at the time: electric vehicles and hybrids. While the world laughed at the first clumsy Chinese EVs and argued about the future of diesel, China began flooding the industry with money at the state level. Their current dominance rests on 3 pillars. Total resource control. China doesn't just build cars, it controls their heart. The country bought up lithium and cobalt deposits around the world in advance and built giant battery factories. Today, companies like CATL and BYD produce 70% of the planet's batteries. Even Tesla and Mercedes often run on Chinese batteries. Brutal internal competition. The Chinese market is a gladiator arena. There are hundreds of car brands you've never even heard of. They survive in a bloody price war. Those who survive this meat grinder and make it to export, like BYD, are battle-hardened fighters with a product that beats any Western competitor on price-to-quality ratio. Speed and digitalization. Western corporations live in 5-year development cycles. The Chinese have cut this time to 24 months. Did the plan work? Let's look at the scoreboard, because numbers don't lie. And these numbers are shocking. For a long time, the automotive world had a big 3 of exporters: Japan, Germany, and South Korea. It seemed impossible to move them. But in 2023, a historical turning point occurred. China officially achieved the impossible. It overtook Japan to become the #1 car exporter in the world. Think about these figures. In 2023, China sent 5.22 million cars abroad. Japan, which held the crown for decades, was left behind with 4.42 million. Germany, the symbol of the auto industry, lagged even further behind. But what's even more striking is the dynamic. In 2020, just 4 to 5 years ago, China exported fewer than 1 million cars. In 3 years, they grew 5 times over. No industry in history has shown such explosive growth in such a complex market. What caused this leap? Of course, skeptics will say it's all because of Russia, and they are partly right. After Western brands left in 2022, China effectively monopolized the Russian market, sending almost 900,000 cars there in a year. That gave a powerful boost. But even if we remove Russia from the equation, China still shows phenomenal growth. They have captured the Mexican market, become sales leaders in Thailand and Australia, and are aggressively entering Europe. And the cherry on top is total production. China today is the undisputed world factory. More than 30 million cars are assembled there annually. To understand the scale, the US produces about 10 million, Japan about 8. That means every third car on planet Earth today is born in China. This is no longer a catch-up game. This is dominance. Do you think China captured the global auto market just because they have cheap labor or endless supplies of batteries? No. They were the first to understand what conservative engineers in Tokyo and Stuttgart missed. The era of just cars is over. While Europeans and Japanese spent decades polishing engines and taking pride in the gaps between body panels, the Chinese staged a quiet revolution in the consumer's mind. They realized that young people don't need handling or brand heritage. They need an iPhone on wheels. They need a wow factor. They turned the car into a third living space after home and office, where you can watch movies, play games, sing karaoke, or sleep while the autopilot handles the traffic. Moreover, they brought the concept of fast fashion to the auto industry. Traditional brands update models every 5 to 7 years. That is an eternity. The Chinese do a restyling every 12 to 18 months, like smartphone manufacturers. They constantly change the shape of headlights, add new software features, and change interior lighting colors. They have hooked the consumer on the needle of novelty. Getting into a new European after sitting in a modern Chinese often feels like getting into your grandfather's car, reliable and high quality, but hopelessly boring and outdated. This understanding of the wow factor became their main hook for buyers worldwide. Another powerful factor in Chinese success that many ignore is design. Agree or not, even if you aren't a fan of the Chinese auto industry, it's hard not to notice the difference. Cars that used to induce laughter now make heads turn on the street. What is the secret to such rapid evolution? Genius headhunting. Chinese bosses realized technology can be copied, but style must be felt. And learning that takes a long time. So, they opened a hunt for Europe's golden pencils. The conditions were royal, mountains of money, complete creative freedom, and no dictatorship of past heritage. The result? A mass exodus of top executives to China. The man who gave the world the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, Giles Taylor, now draws for the Chinese luxury brand Hongqi. The creator of Audi's aggressive style, Wolfgang Egger, now works for BYD. Bentley's luxury went to Zeekr, Stefan Siloff. BMW's aggression went to Great Wall, Pierre Leclerc. So, when you see a beautiful Chinese car, don't be surprised. Essentially, it is a European school of design, simply paid for with UN. China decided not to waste time on drawing lessons. They simply hired the best teachers. But buying designers is just the beginning. The real nightmare for Elon Musk and Toyota began when those who had never made cars at all entered the game. Imagine if Apple released its own car tomorrow. They tried for 10 years and closed the project. But China's Xiaomi did it in 3 years. Their SU7 sedan looks like a Porsche, drives like a Tesla, but costs like a budget sedan. In the first 27 minutes after the presentation, they received 50,000 orders. Or look at Huawei. They didn't build their own factory. They became the brain for others. The Huawei system inside a car works faster and smoother than any software from Volkswagen or Mercedes. China has erased the line between the smartphone and the car. Now, it is a single ecosystem. You get in the car, and it already knows what music you were listening to at home, what route you need, and what temperature your room is. Western auto giants, still struggling with glitchy menus, look like dinosaurs trying to master an iPad against this backdrop. But let's not deny the downsides. If everything were so perfect, the world would have long forgotten about Toyota and Volkswagen. This glossy success has a dark flip side that is kept silent in beautiful advertising brochures. China has learned how to make a cool product, but it hasn't yet learned how to support it. Buying a car today is easy, but fixing it after an accident is a true survival quest. Europeans and Japanese spent decades building logistics. If a bumper breaks, a new one arrives tomorrow. With Chinese cars, it's different. You can buy a premium electric car for $50,000 to $60,000, get into a minor fender bender, and be stuck dry docked for 3 months. Why? Because parts catalogs are chaos, parts travel by sea, and sometimes they simply stop manufacturing them. The Chinese auto industry right now is a perpetual beta version. Bright and high-tech, but raw. Yes, they have problems. Yes, service is lacking, and reliability raises questions. But it is foolish to deny the obvious. The point of no return has been passed. The automotive map of the world has been rewritten, and there is no longer a Western hegemony. We are living in a unique time of changing eras. And perhaps in 10 years, our children will look at a Toyota Corolla with the same affection and nostalgia as we look at rotary phones or cassette players today. A reliable classic that simply couldn't withstand the pressure of the digital future. Are you ready to take the risk and switch to a Chinese car today? Or will you wait until they learn how to ship spare parts? Write your opinion in the comments. It's going to be heated. Subscribe so you don't miss how the world is changing. See you soon!